Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Trustees for San Felipe Auditorium CISD, this August 17, 2020 meeting to order. This meeting will be conducted in video conference in accordance with the Governor's authorization concerning suspension of certain open meeting law requirements for COVID-19 disaster. Madam Secretary, would you call roll first?
Yes, sir. Mr. Contreras? Ms. Manuel? Ms. Haynes? Mr. Mesa?
Here.
Mr. Lefelt?
Present.
Mr. Smith? No. Myself? Sir, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We have Mr. Fred Contreras out and Mr. Ken Smith. We do have a quorum. Let the record show that we do have a quorum of board members and that this meeting has been duly called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. This time we'll have opening ceremonies, first with a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag
Like
of the
the United States of America,
to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once again, welcome everyone. We have a regular meeting today. We're down to item 8, reports. First item that we have is 2020-2021 Interactive Budget Workbook Review. Dr. Rios.
Yeah, Ms. Presa, we have Amy Childress who has joined us, and she will be presenting the workbook.
Okay.
If Mr. Jenkins will make Amy Childress a host.
Good evening. Can you see? Okay. Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. This evening, we are going to just take another look at our interactive budget workbook for 2020-2021 as we still continue the process of our budgets. So the first update we have is on the return to work stipend. So on this tab, we did make corrections to the Model C, which was the 1.7% return to work stipend. We did have TASB send us an update on that file. So we did correct some of the amounts that were erroneous when you compared them to the 2%. So that model did show an amount of $920,997. We have also added the 2% return to work stipend that was discussed also. That would show that includes a $1,200 return to work stipend for the teachers at a cost of $729,600. A 2% return to work stipend of their midpoint for paraprofessionals which would be $163,934, and a 2% return to work stipend of the midpoint for our auxiliary personnel for $131,755, which would bring us to a total of $1,025,289. In addition, on our conversion and reductions tab since the last update, we have added some positions that are going to show for some reductions, and we increased that amount by $534,059. So we are now showing reductions or conversions of $1.2 million.
Can you review those positions for the board, Ms. Childress?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The positions that have been added since the last time are the counselor at Blended. I have a peace officer and a security guard at Del Rio Middle School, a teacher at Del Rio High School, an academic achievement specialist at CNI. We had a excess teaching position from a prior year that we also are eliminating, a teaching position at Del Rio Middle School, an instructional support specialist at Lamar, a teacher at Cardwell, an interventionist at Del Rio Middle School, and an instructional support specialist at Buena Vista. Those are the positions, the reductions that we added. On the construction tab, at this time, we have not made any changes since the last update. Food service, we have no projects at this time budgeted. In operations, we removed the amount for the maintenance vehicle, the service truck, the interior and exterior painting at Garfield, Lamar, and Buena Vista, and campus furniture at Ruben Chivita. This saved us, or the amount we've reduced is $394,490. In technology, we had already removed the one-to-one devices, but we have now updated the virtual environment to $300,000. Originally, it was $608,000. So we reduced that by about a little over $300,000. So that brings us to our totals tab. And just so that you can see those changes that were implemented. So we have the 2% return to work stipend coming out of the general fund budget. We have the insurance contribution, the $1 million. And in adding that, we had $450,000 originally budgeted in departments. So we removed that $450,000 and added the full $1 million in general fund. Some other changes that we did have in our department budget, we reduced pupil services budget by $150,000. We reduced the attendance and compliance budget by $40,423. We reduced human services budget by $25,000 and security by $25,000. And we also reduced our state programs, our CNI tutorial budget by $100,000. So in doing so, we currently have a budget of $100,818,811.
Mr. Mesa, members of the board, with the exception of the pay or the return to work stipends, which we're going to discuss here in another agenda item, are there any other questions on any of the other items listed in the workbook?
Yes, I see, I don't see everyone here, but I see Mr. Overfelt.
Yes, sir. On the positions that were reduced, Ms. Childress. If you go back up to the, I guess to the top of the page, there we go. Peace officer and security guard at middle school. You said those were going to be, we're removing those. Is that what that was?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Dr. Rios, are we just removing it because we're not anticipating a full 1,600 something students this year? Or I guess I'm just wondering or verifying why we would do that.
Yes, Mr. Overfield, but just to be clear, we're not necessarily removing them from Del Rio Middle School. We're going to go back and work with Chief Maldonado to see how we rearrange the officer assignments that we have. I'll give you, for example, there really doesn't need to be a security officer at SGLC. We're not planning on having students there. So that person could be relocated to Del Rio Middle School or one of the other campuses that might have less students. We might take that person. For example, San Felipe Memorial is a small campus to begin with, and it's further reduced. So we'll come up with different solutions. We're not necessarily reducing one at Del Rio Middle School. That's just where they were previously assigned.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orfeld. Dr. News, I have a question regarding personnel also at Cardinal. Is this a teacher that is funded out of Head Start or the regular program?
No, sir. These are all funded out of regular program, everybody that we've listed here. Now, I will share with the board that every year we ask the board to approve 5 additional positions should they become necessary. So if the enrollment was to grow, we definitely have room in the budget to allot 1, 2, or 3 more teachers. But these are just reductions because of current enrollment.
Okay, so they're still recruiting students.
Yes, sir. They were short. I visited with Dr. Talamantes and we talked about how short they were to reaching their goal for the grant. And she mentioned the efforts that they were having. So it's our hope that they'll still get there.
Okay. Anyone else with questions? I can't see everyone. Is there anyone raising their hand? I can't see. Or you can just unmute. Yes, Ms. Webb.
In reference to your comment right now about the teachers at Cardwell, in the event, because they have to have their total enrollment, if they get their total enrollment, will a teacher be allocated to that campus or will a teacher be reassigned? Well, they can't really be reassigned because they have to be approved by policy council once they reach their total enrollment.
We have a couple of options. Some of the teachers were reassigned to other campuses. So our first goal would be to get those teachers back to that campus and then hire for the place where they came from. So I know that our Chief Human Resource Officer worked with a couple of principals to transition some teachers to other campuses. As our enrollment grows, we would first look to move those teachers back to Cardwell because they have experience there, and then hire for these other campuses.
Okay. I guess the only reason I was asking, and I'm glad you said that if the enrollment is where it needs to be, because it definitely has to, that the teachers would be reassigned back since they were already approved by the council. That was my only question. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Rios, in regard to that topic, it's my understanding that they have a waiver this year from regional office Head Start regarding COVID-19 and the total enrollment, the funded enrollment, correct?
I'll follow up with Dr. Talamantes. I didn't get to broach that subject, but I'll follow up and they'll provide an answer in the board update, sir. But it sounds...
It's my understanding that they have a waiver for this year because of COVID-19 in making sure that they reach the funded amount of students. So there is a waiver. That's my understanding.
Okay. I'll follow up. Thank you for that point.
Anyone else? Amy, did you go over the operations?
Yes.
Okay, on the construction?
On the construction, yes, sir. We currently still have both projects in the budget,
Okay,
the track and the life skills unit.
okay, we discussed earlier, I know that you called and I told you that I was not able to input my preference for delaying the track resurfacing, you know, for maybe a year or so. I know Mr. Orfeld had discussed this before, and I was in agreement with that we don't necessarily have a lot of activities that are planned for this year, Dr. Rios, that we could possibly push this back one more year.
Absolutely, Mr. Mesa, members of the board, we can do that. And we discussed in cabinet earlier today what we would do with those additional 200,000 if that's in fact the direction the board chose to go. And my recommendation to the cabinet was that if we didn't spend on the track, then I would encourage the board to allocate to, instead of funding 5 positions, 5 unfilled positions, that we add that money into that pocket, because if we get more students that were to transition to face-to-face instruction, we would need additional teachers so that we can keep the numbers at 15 or lower on face-to-face. Right now, we're presenting a balanced budget, but if the board still wanted to hold off on the track resurfacing, we had discussed where that money should go, and that would be my recommendation, unless the board has other opinions on where else we should either not reduce positions or other expenses that we haven't discussed yet. But that's my recommendation, Mr. Mesa, if the board saw to it. And I think that, Ms. Childress, how many of the board members have submitted their interactive workbooks? I know 3. Has anybody else done it?
I received 2. Well, Mr. Mesa and then Ms. Gonzalez are the only ones I've received.
I thought Ms. Guanajuato had submitted hers earlier.
Dr. Rios? No, I couldn't submit it because I couldn't get on to be able to work on the workbook, but I am in agreement that we hold off on the track and transfer the money if we need the teachers, because it is vital that the teachers stay at 15-to-1, especially with the distance, the 6-foot distance. So I'm in agreement with Mr. Mesa that we hold off on the track.
Dr. Rios, I think that's where we had difficulty getting our input regarding a yes or a no. But I don't know what the other board members, how the other board members feel. I know that Amy got Ms. Gonzalez, and I just heard Mrs. Webb. Mr. Orfeld?
Yes, sir. For the last month, I think everyone knows where I stand on the track. $200,000 could be spent somewhere else this year as opposed to that.
Okay, good. And Amy?
I also agree. I think I stated last time as well that I was okay with that we wait on the track as well.
Okay, great. So I can't pull the other board members that are not here, but I think it's pretty much the understanding that we pull that one back.
Mesa, one other comment, and this is for Dr. Rios. On the 15-to-1, are we talking about 15 students to 1 teacher, or are we also counting the adult in the classroom?
No, ma'am, we're only, I want to be clear on it. We're not counting the adult in the classroom. We're only counting the students, and we're only talking about the face-to-face instruction.
Right.
So teachers that are doing online, they have a much bigger group because they're doing it in 2 sessions. We're just talking about limiting the students in the classroom, and particularly at the elementary level. The secondary numbers, for the most part, I think all look to be under 15-1 right now. But that's what we're talking about.
Okay, like for example, at Cardwell, if you have 15-1 plus 2 adults, I don't know that you would have this 6-foot space between all of the students if it's 15-1 and 2 adults. That would have to be something to look into. But,
Correct. At Cardwell, we're talking about having one teacher maybe supervise 2 spaces. We're trying to see how that works out. So it would, numbers would very likely be even lower.
Thank you.
Then I think we're fine, Dr. Ruiz. I think pretty much everyone has given their input.
Okay, then we'll update the budget workbook for the presentation next Monday, Mr. Mesa, and we'll allocate $200,000 for the track resurfacing. I know that there's some coaches out there listening and some students who run or parents of students that run track. So I'll mention this, Mr. Mesa, if we get through the year without having to use all of the money for extended teachers, maybe we can bring back in April or May, if we didn't use up all the positions, and at that point suggest to do it at the end of the summer, based on whatever money we may have left over in May, if that's possible. And I just say that just so that I'd hate for those that participate in track to think that they have to wait 24 months. So maybe they only have to wait 8 or 10, possibly.
Sure, I think that's what we understood pretty much, is just pushing it back possibly 1 year.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Okay.
We'll definitely update it with that in mind. So.
Okay, then we'll go on to the next item on our agenda, and we're down to item 8B, curriculum documents update. Ida Gomez.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. This evening, we will give you a presentation on the updates for the curriculum documents that the teachers will be using, a lot for their remote learning, but also for their face-to-face instruction. When a teacher goes into their dashboard, they sign on. It's a one-link sign-on. Of course, you're looking at mine right now, and it has a lot of other content in it. So a second grade teacher, for instance, would come in and all she would see, for instance, are her tiles. There's 6. There's an ELA, a science, a social studies, a math, a new math, and then the home-based instruction that were the activities from this summer. I'll start with a second grade ELA, and I'll give you an update on the planning guides. So when we look at a planning guide, it comes up in a square like this. And immediately the teacher can enlarge it. I'm going to enlarge it even further for you. What we've updated are the templates themselves in a more organized fashion. So for instance, you're going to see the ELA templates. On the left, you're going to see all the TEKS. This is everything that the teacher has to teach in second grade for ELA. They're all listed across the left. In the past, teachers had to actually carry separate books to figure out what the TEKS were. They had to have different documents. And in just a moment, I'll show you how we're tying it to the TEKS guide that the Texas Education Agency has actually trained us on and made available. Another update has been everything that you see in blue. Not sure if you can see all the links, but everything in blue are actually parts of the Teacher Edition handbook, and these are used for teachers. So if I'm at home and I don't have my Teacher Edition, I can come, look at my template, click on a practice sheet, click on a vocabulary sheet, and I would immediately have access. So going back to all the TEKs that teachers had to teach, and we're very happy with this, that we were able to work with our programmers and our curriculum writers to get this done. If a teacher's unsure of, for instance, what 2.2a is, they can go to their TEKS guide, which automatically connects to the TEA website. TEA has produced this for kinder through 8th grade teachers in ELA. They were working for other content, but because of COVID, I think things did slow down. Once these come up, you'll see that earlier we were looking at the 2.21, which was rhyming words, for instance. This takes them to an immediate page. Our teachers, our new teachers are coming in. There's so much vocabulary out there. They can hover over phonological awareness and get a definition. What is it that they have to teach, and what is it that the student is expected to learn under this particular TEK? TA has also provided immediate text talks. They're just little short videos that I won't go over, but most of them are 2 to 3 minutes long, and I just did want to show you how easy it is for a teacher to start understanding what the beginning reading and writing component is that this TEK addresses. Another thing that we've done is we've been able to come in and link the teacher edition. So if a teacher is at home, let's just say it crosses over from a second to a third 6 weeks, we've been able to download the entire book, or upload, I should say. This particular one has 113 pages, you'll see at the very top, and it is a flip book. We don't expect teachers to flip through 113 pages, so working again, we're able to just come in and put a page number at the top, and it will automatically take you to that page. They still have the capability at that point to move forward or not. In addition, we've been able to take the student workbooks. They're no longer textbooks. Students get 1 workbook per 6 weeks. So you'll see here that the first 6 weeks is divided into the 6 units. The students also, it's just taking just one moment to load, but the students also have the ability to have an interactive flex book. So again, this one is 44 pages long. We feel that just by having the flexbook capability instead of just a sheet in front of them, just makes it a little bit more interesting for students to maneuver. Again, those are some of the updates that we provided for the ELA. But as mentioned earlier, our teachers also have all the content that they have to teach in math, science, and social studies as well. So if I was to take you to the new math, for instance, this one we're very pleased with also, because you're going to see, let me go back to the planning guide. And you will see here that on the planning guide, it's what we would call a very structured routine. What we've done with the math curriculum is this one, for instance, is divided into 30 days. You'll actually start seeing on the documents, I don't know if I can make it a little bigger, you'll see day 1, handouts and materials. Then you'll see day 2, handouts and materials. You'll see day 3, handouts and materials. You'll see day 4, handouts and materials. Every 5th day for math, we do have something called progress monitoring. But what the team came together to do for teachers was to put everything in an orderly fashion so that teachers can concentrate on the actual lesson and not having to go look for the actual handouts and materials that would go with the lesson. This way, when they plan, they can actually spend the time on what is it, on how they're going to teach it rather than what is it that they're going to teach. I can continue on and show you day 6, place value has handouts and materials. Day 7 has handouts and materials. Day 8, day 9, it's the same pattern. And then again, on that 5th day, we do have progress monitoring. This is something that we were able to assist our teachers with by having that complete routine on a daily basis. Another thing that we were able to update was the vocabulary. By doing this, every second grade teacher across the district is teaching the same vocabulary with the same definitions, with the same pictorials. They can print these, they can upload them onto Google, they can put them on a whiteboard and interact with them. But again, this allows the teachers the same access across the board. And those are some of the updates that we've done. For social studies, very interesting, TA it's mandated that we have to do some mandated trainings. So when we look at social studies, teachers are usually having to look for resources for these mandated holiday type mandated trainings because we don't have books with those documents in them. One of the things that the team did do for social studies, you'll see down here, is an events calendar. These are all TEA documents. We have to teach Women's Independence Day, Labor Day, of course, the Texas First Responders Day. But what we started doing is actually putting the documents up here that teachers can use. It tells you here, this is a guide to celebrate Freedom Week. These are federal and state mandated observations. But whenever there is a Texas Education Code mandate, the teachers have to teach it. Not only does it give you a history, but then there's lots of activities that'll assist the teacher when she's creating her planning documents and her lessons. We've also been able to work with Epic Books. Epic Books is an enormous library of articles, of videos, of stories, of news articles. Epic Books, we've been able to tie, it's a free service that does not expire until September of 2021. This connection here, this mentor stock, just helps our teachers to be able to teach what they need to teach about communities and maps. But there's also some mentor text that parents and students have access to. Board members, these documents will be going on the parent portal, so anything that's linked, a parent has access to. You'll see at the bottom, the mandated courses are linked right here with the Texas Education Agency. Over on the opposite side of the document, you'll see the connection with the Lead Forward document. So if a teacher needs to know anything about their TEAC specifically, is it a readiness standard? Is it a supporting standard? Does it fall under citizenship or government? They can come into the one-click button with the Lead Forward document. And finally, I can show you some updates to the second grade science. And you'll see how quickly all of these upload for teachers. They can do them from home, they can do them from their phone, they can upload pretty much from anywhere because it's their login with their password. Bring up the planning document. Again, for science, you'll see here that we have included many new links. Everything in blue is new. These are just links. We do follow in San Felipe del Rio, the 5E model: engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. You'll see links throughout. You'll also see that there's interventions for acceleration or intervention. And again, another item that we're very happy with is the vocabulary, because it allows us across the board for all our teachers to have the same vocabulary to be teaching students. These are just some of the updates, but the plan behind it, board members, was how do we engage our students with a piece of device in front of them? We've linked as many resources as possible. We've linked readers. We've linked workbooks, anchor charts, videos. We've linked the teacher editions so that teachers do not have to carry those big, bulky teacher editions that we all know and are very heavy. We've made flip books out of them, so again, they don't have to scroll through hundreds of pages. We've linked the student workbooks. All of those can be uploaded onto the Google Docs or the Google Documents. We've added many extra books like Epic Books and TextQuest videos and brain pop and songs. We've also linked many lessons and activities for those mandated TA and federal trainings in social studies. We've added and created vocabulary for math and for science across the district, so all our teachers are teaching the exact same vocabulary. We've linked the lead forward documents for teachers so that they don't have to look for a different resource. They have it right on the template. And of course, we've linked the TEKS guide, which is one of the strongest resources that TA has put out for our English language arts. We're very confident that making all these updates across the content is going to help our teachers, our students, and our parents interact with the platform a little better and help our students stay just a little bit more engaged. That is the presentation on the updates. I know it was a little bit. Any questions or go back to anything that you all would like to see?
And before I turn it over to board members, I'd just like to say that it is a tremendous improvement. I mean, amazing. I am amazed at all the resources available for teachers. I remember the time when I was teaching, I spent a couple of hours on a Sunday doing my lesson planning. This is going to make it so easy for teachers to access all the materials available for them, even the short video, to talk about the TEKS, for example. It's just amazing. It just, I feel like the more teachers use it, it'll be easier for them to incorporate into their year and make every lesson just to their advantage. And of course, it's going to improve instruction a whole lot across the grades. I'll turn it over to board members. Do you have questions? Right, Diana, what's that?
Yeah, I want to comment on how impressed I am with this. Excellent work to everybody. It's great.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Ms. Wood?
Yes, I think the work done is great. We saw for grade 2. So I'm assuming we have from first grade or kinder all the way up through 5th already done, or we're still working on them?
For the first 6 weeks, yes, ma'am. They're completely done.
Okay. Then, may I have a copy of the PowerPoint, please?
Yes, ma'am. It's actually the dashboard. This is actually live on our website. I can definitely send you a password.
Okay, thank you. And then
Yes, ma'am.
the other question that I have, let's say that I have 3 different grade level children at my house, like a 2nd grader, a 3rd grader, and a 5th grader. How can you explain how the online is going to work? Are all of them going to be online at the same time? Or is the 2nd grade teacher going to be online from 8 a.m. to 10, and then the 4th grader from 10 to, how is it going to work if I have 3 or 4 children at the house?
I'll answer that. When parents have multiple students, particularly in grades 3, 4, and 5, then the principals will work with them. If they have a student in K1 and 2, that instruction is asynchronous. So the students can really log on and complete their work anytime before midnight. But if students are in grades 3, 4, and 5, then they have to work with either the teacher or the principal, so they can put them on opposite sides in case they only have one device at home to share between the 2 students. But there is a way to work around it.
Okay, so all the teachers are not going to be presenting at the same time?
Well, they will be presenting, but all the students don't have to be on at the same time. Some students can be on in the AM, some can be on in the PM. The teachers will be presenting up to 2 sessions. So for example, if I'm a 3rd grade teacher doing fully online, I could very well have a group from 8 to 11, and then another group from 12 to 3. But my kids at home, if they were in elementary, one could be in the morning, and then one could be in the afternoon, depending on how they're scheduled. And the principals and the teachers will very easily work with the parents to make it work.
Okay. Thank you. Great job.
Dr. Lewis, I just wanted to add something that, like for the science, especially, that was my area, but I don't know how we could incorporate manipulatives, for example, simple machines, and I'm talking about when there's units that are being, the instruction is given for them to be able to see simple machines examples of, and so I know in different areas they have cabinets with all these science Erlenmeyer flask and a beaker and a Bunsen burner and those type of things, just so they can be familiar with what they are, because they are used in lab settings, and if they pursue a career in science, they will be using these manipulatives and other items that are associated with science. For example, prisms and cones and things of that sort. So if somehow we could, you know,
That's already done, Mr. Mesa. We purchased STEM scopes and they linked it. They linked the resource to the planning guides, so they will be able to see this virtually. Now, in terms of having something that they can actually touch and send one home, well, that's impossible. But they can definitely see it online, and maybe Ms. Gomez already knows of an example she can very quickly pull up.
I didn't mean virtual. I just meant the actual thing.
For the campus, the kids that come in to school, I'm sure the teachers already have some of that, and if not, we can buy some for them. So we'll definitely look at that.
Just for the future.
Yes, sir.
What is that a question? Ms. Gonzalez?
I'm just looking at the little B here, I like it. I don't have any questions.
You have a question? Okay.
So, Mr. Mesa, one just huge thing, really two things, just how easily teachers will be able to load a lot of these resources onto their Google Docs. But what's really important is that this year, teachers will be teaching all 4 subjects. And the amount of planning that they would have to do would just be impossible. But by getting these documents at this level, and because the similarity between one document and the other are almost identical, you know, they learn one document to navigate through, let's say, ELA or through social studies, then those skills are transferable to the other documents, and it's just going to help teachers a whole lot, especially when you think about taking a teacher who's only done reading and now has to do math. The resources are right there, so it's just going to be a tremendous resource, especially for the teachers that haven't taught that subject, and obviously for new teachers as well. So I'm very proud of the work that the people that worked on these documents were able to do, and we hope that we'll have the opportunity to complete the 2nd through 6 weeks with this.
I'm simply amazed at all the work that has been going on in curriculum. So great things. I just want to applaud everyone involved. Anyone else have a question? Then I want to thank you, Ms. Gomez. A great presentation, and I look forward to a great year and a great instructional improvement in our curriculum, and of course, the instruction that goes on every day in the classroom.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. Thank you, board members.
Thank you. We go on to the next item, item C, technology devices and connectivity deployment update. Mr. Hengate.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. Okay, for tonight's presentation, we'll be looking at the remote distance learning and technology support as far as devices, where we're at with deploying those, or starting out with the process, and then moving into computer allocation by campuses, internet service requests by campuses, and then resource procurement summary.
Mr. Hengate, before you go on, can you explain the picture on there? It's just that picture, if they would know what that involved, they'll just tell 1,000 stories.
Yes, sir. So identifying that we were going to need these devices throughout the district, what we've done is over the last 4 weeks, we've gone to each campus and we've individually packaged every machine that we were putting out as far as the desktops go, because we realized there were going to be challenges with deploying those to residential areas, unlike laptops where we could just have them log in at the campus and take it home. The desktop computers have a lot more involved. They have the monitors, the individual keyboards, mice, and then the CPU itself. So to help that process along, what we've done is gone through and had everything shut down, plugged in. We use saran wrap, or a saran wrap type material there from the warehouse. And we've wrapped them up, as well as had installation directions with each of them based on the type of machine it was. Everything was color coordinated. And this particular picture here is over at Cardwell campus, but we've done this much throughout the district. We've had a centralized location where the campuses chose to be able to have parents pull up, be able to receive the devices, they take them home, and then get them plugged in. This next slide here actually shows the plan that we had put together internally for that process that I just kind of gave an overview of. In the upper left-hand corner, it shows the campus where they reached out to residents and set up appointments, days and times. Then we had specific tasks that our technology department was in charge of accomplishing, and then some highlighted areas that we received some campus support. So knowing that this deployment was going to be huge, we really needed to leverage a lot of resources from the campuses as well, and it's worked out very well. But as we go through, it shows the technology department where we would come out, we would package the computers, custodians would actually take them and move them from the classrooms to the location where the parent would either come in, or some campuses had stations set up outside where they did almost like a drive-through to be able to receive the devices. And then they took them home, plugged them in. If it was successful, then they're ready for the next step. If they ran into any problems at home, then they would contact our help desk based on the installation directions that we gave them, and we would help troubleshoot over the phone. And if it were, one thing that we have experienced were some broken monitors. And what we've done is quickly had them bring them back, and we just swapped them out for a different monitor, and we were able to get them up and going that way. But out of all the computers we've deployed, I think we've had less than 4 returns. So it's been a very good process so far.
Go back, Mr. Hanger, you missed a big
Yes,
part. Go back.
Yes, sir.
Once the computer gets to the house, talk about that a little bit.
Okay. So once the computer gets to the house, then the parent or guardian would go ahead and cut the saran wrap on it, if you will, and they have 3 cables to plug in, 2 power cables, and then a network cable that plugs into their modem if they already have internet at their house. At that point, they would go ahead and power the machine on, and we've set these machines with local admin rights, so there will be no restrictions as far as the students being able to log into the systems that Ms. Gomez had just mentioned. If there's additional software updates that need to be done, they'll be able to facilitate all this stuff at their house. We do have some that were able to successfully set their computers up, but their cables weren't long enough. So we've requested that they come by technology, and we're cutting custom cables to fit the size of what their needs are. In the event they don't have internet, we are communicating with them that we're working on that plan as well, which is going to almost mimic this process that I'm describing here for the computers. But overall, it's been working out very well. We also have systems in place right now that will allow us to be able to remotely support the computers that are at home. We should be finalizing those plans within the upcoming days. So again, it's all based around streamlining the help and support, being able to document the support tickets that come in, and figure out what we can do as a technology department to be able to reduce downtime and keep these computers running as much as possible to help support the remote instruction. Any questions on that?
Questions, board members?
Okay.
I think we'll let you go on, and then we'll see what else comes up.
Okay. This next slide here looks at the computer allocation by campus, working with campus principals and campus personnel. Phone calls were made to all of the parents to identify who needed devices, who had devices, and we've even broken it down into 3 weeks for full online instruction for the year. Based on these numbers, and everyone should have a copy of this as well, the requested devices that we've received from elementary campus totals 2,418 devices. And out of those, we do have a waiting list yet of 505 devices. These numbers have been changing almost daily, so what we've been doing is taking snapshots of where the numbers are, and I believe about a week and a half ago, we had to stop with that number to make that obtainable, and at that point, we still had another 505 requests that had come in after that deadline. We're still working to address those needs. But the ultimate goal was to get enough devices spread throughout the district to where we could get as many students covered with devices as possible. At the secondary level, we had a total of 2,312 devices requested, and the waiting list currently is at 313 devices. At the bottom of this slide, we went so far as to break down the number of iPads that we deployed, which was 643 to elementary. That would have been for K, first and second grade. And then from third, fourth, and fifth, we moved over to desktops. So in total, the devices that we've prepared at this point for elementary, out of the 2,400 requested, is 1,913. At the secondary level, we've been leveraging more of our laptops, and this was from 6th grade through 12th grade. Laptops at this point was 1,350. And once we depleted that inventory, then we moved into desktop deployments at 649, bringing the total prepared devices for secondary to 1,999 devices.
Go back, Les, please.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mesa, members of the board, I want to point out 2 items. The first one is that if we look at the number of desktops that had to be prepared, that is almost 2,000 devices that had to be individually wrapped and prepared and make sure the re-imaged to make sure that they work. So that was a whole lot of work on the part of the technology department. So congratulations to them for being successful in such a huge undertaking. The other part is the fact that we are still about 820 devices short for everyone that requested one. And we have a couple of options to resolve that. But at this point, we're still 820 devices short, which is still a large number. Some of these, we believe that they can double up at home, but that won't take care of the majority of them, just some of them. So go ahead, Mr. Hange.
This next slide, we did the same or followed the same process for getting information on internet service requests. For the elementary campuses, the total requested households that needed internet was 424. And to date, we have 88 of those scheduled. Remaining needs is 336 for elementary. Secondary campuses, the requested internet services is 388, and we've scheduled 67 of those. Part of the reason that the numbers are so low right now is we've been partnering with Spectrum over the last few months to qualify Spectrum internet services available at all these locations. To date, we've been able to qualify 155 addresses, with another 35 that should be qualified by tomorrow morning. And I'll continue on with that as we get further along in this presentation to give you a better picture of what this looks like. But we definitely have some work to do with the home internet yet. Resource procurement district summary. So in total, district-wide devices requested has been 4,730 devices, which currently gives us a device shortage of roughly 812. It's looking like it's closer to the 820 number that Dr. Rios mentioned earlier. The internet service requests, in total, we had 812, and the internet service shortage that we're experiencing right now off of those needs is 657 residential areas that do need to have internet. The next area down here, we did do a summary of the devices that we have on order and how many we've received. So out of 4,320 devices that we've had ordered, we only have 402 devices that have come in yet. Some of those devices are coming in at 25 at a time or 58 at a time, but unfortunately, we're not getting large numbers in right now. With that being said, we have been offsetting those needs by repurposing computers that are throughout the district. All campuses at this point have done their deployments. They do have waiting lists, as I've shown in previous slides, and Del Rio High School starts their deployment tomorrow. So we're focusing all of our efforts right now to make sure that the high school students are able to be able to receive their devices this week. On the internet procurement side, like I had mentioned, we had entered into a K-12 program agreement with Spectrum, but to date, they've only cleared 155 internet connections. We do have 65 hotspots that are in-house that we have not deployed yet. We are in the process of doing a local order of 200 hotspots, which we're being told should be here within the next week and a half. And then, of course, we have 412 hotspots on order through our TA bulk order. But at this time, we don't have an ETA on when those devices are going to be here. So in total for our internet plan, we will come in at 832 devices, which will give us a little bit extra as these numbers have changed. So right now, it's really everything that we have out there on order when it gets here, and we get it deployed out as quickly as possible. Questions?
Okay, first of all, Dr. Rios, just want to remind board members, we do have a copy of this presentation at our desk. And I think you've answered all my questions as waited for the rest of the presentation in regard to orders trickling in, devices and hotspots. But my question has to do with Dr. Rios' TA correspondence. I know that you have your Zoom meetings monthly. Is this something happening across the state where these orders are just not being delivered? And what follow-up information do you have?
Absolutely, Mr. Mesa. Everybody is experiencing this. We were one of the first ones that submitted the order to TA. If you remember, I signed the MOU and then I asked the board to ratify it after the fact. And we reached out to them and they didn't respond. And we asked the service center to reach out for them. And the service center concluded that it would take anywhere between 4 to 8 weeks for those laptops, to reach us. Now, with that in mind, we're looking for other avenues to procure resources for our students. Walmart, for example, would sell some laptops that we couldn't connect to our network, but perhaps some businesses in town might want to sponsor a couple of students. So we're going to try to work something out through our education foundation to provide scholarships for students to get some of those laptops. Mr. Henge also presented an idea of how we could take all desktops in the district and provide virtual PCs, and then it might give us an additional 132 devices to issue to students. Now I know that makes people uncomfortable because a lot of people don't want to give up their desktops. But when we look at the numbers of students that still need the laptops and the fact that TA won't be providing any for anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, the other Chromebooks that were on order, we also don't have any indication that we're going to get those before TA gets theirs to us. So we're looking at every possible way, because when a student doesn't have a device, then we have to work with them individually over the telephone. And while we might be able to spread this to 3 or 4 students per teacher, it's still going to be a different learning experience and somewhat problematic for everyone having to do it. So I don't know if there's any questions other than that, Mr. Mesa.
Dr. Rios, my other question is has TA mentioned anything about this $15 internet service? The commissioner mentioned that in the next couple of weeks, he would find ways to reimburse us for everything that we purchased, even outside of the bulk orders from TA. So he did mention that not only were they going to look at providing for us an internet stipend, but he also said that there would be ways for us to recover money for any devices that we ordered outside of the bulk order. So if you look at the sheet that's still on the screen, we purchased 300 of the Latitudes. We purchased 200 Chromebooks ourselves, and then we purchased another 200 of the Dell Latitudes. So even those, he said that they would find a way to reimburse us. So yes, sir, he did talk about that, as well as reimbursing us for other hardware stuff that we may have bought. So we are getting some help from Spectrum?
Like Les mentioned, they have about 155 students that are qualified yet, and then another 35 hopefully by tomorrow, and they keep looking at the list. It's just that they have a hard time identifying what parts of the town actually have Spectrum connection. So our preference is to go with Spectrum, just because we know that a hardwire connectivity is a whole lot better. AT&T, unfortunately, over the last 2 weeks, they've had at least 2 days where there's no connectivity in Del Rio or very slow. So that's why we prefer the direct cable modem, but they have to have service in that area. So we keep working with them. And right now they're the only ones that have come through. I'm eager to see how the hotspots work. I know that Mr. Hengay and his staff went and tested them throughout the community, and he had some positive results. I'm just worried that when we have 200 or 400 students on the hotspots, what that might do to the system. And then we're transmitting a whole lot of video. It's not just data. So
one more question to you. So we are getting a little bit of a break in regard to, I guess I want to say internet fees from Spectrum.
Oh, okay. Specifically, Mr. Hengay, do you remember the cost? I know that there was limited savings on it, but do you remember the cost they gave us?
Yes, sir. Our rate is $29.99 a month, and they did waive the the installation fee since we're leveraging assistance with our help desk, and it is a month-to-month agreement. Originally, it was supposed to be a one-year agreement, so they're really working with us.
Okay, well, that's something at least that they're helping us a little bit. I think all of the districts are in the same boat in regard to purchase orders, and that they're going to be trickling in. My biggest concern is that when we do start school, that again, the devices will not be here, and they'll be set back a couple of weeks. I'll turn it over to board members for further questions.
Ms. Webb has her hand up, sir.
Who does? Ms. Webb?
Webb.
This is for Mr. Hengay. You mentioned in your presentation that you had iPads from K first and second. What about the Head Start students, the pre-kinder students? They don't have the motor skills to use the mouse yet. So are there iPads for those students?
At this point, ma'am, all of our iPads have been deployed, and we have been issuing out desktops for pre-K.
Because they don't have the fine motor skills to use the mouse. I know for a fact. And then my next question is, I understand, and I don't know, maybe you can answer this. How many campuses, how many secretaries, or what campuses the secretaries have lost their desktop for a laptop? Is that all campuses or just some campuses?
The only ones that have done that is at Cardwell, and here's why. Cardwell purchased some laptops for instructional purposes. So unfortunately, we have a handful of new laptops at Cardwell, but we can't issue them to students because of the funds that they used to buy them. So we can't take any of those laptops and issue them. So initially, we were going to take the laptops and swap them out for teacher desktops because they were purchased for the teachers to use. In working with the campus administration, they said, we prefer that you take the secretaries' desktops and have them use the laptops so that the teachers continue to use what's comfortable to them. So, there's just a whole lot of moving pieces, and if that's what they preferred, then that's what we did. However, in moving forward, there are 132 desktops that are issued to different secretaries across the district. And Mr. Hengay is currently working to see if we could use what we call virtual PCs to be able to take those 132, because at the secondary, we're still short, well, really both elementary and secondary. So right now it's only Cardwell, and that was a campus decision. Our recommendation was to swap them out for the teacher ones. The campus chose to take the secretaries. But we hope that by the end of this week, Mr. Hengay can figure out a way to make the rest of the secretaries' desktops work in the virtual mode, so that then we can have another 132. That's probably more than what you asked, but I wanted to share the whole picture with you, ma'am.
Okay. Then my next question, if they're going to be utilizing laptops, and I guess this is for future, are there any docking stations or snap-in docking stations where they can snap in their laptop so that they can be able to use a wireless keyboard? Because these secretaries are online all day long, they're on their computers all day long, and definitely we don't want any more, we actually want to prevent repetitive stress or injuries to their wrists, to their fingers, due to carpal tunnel. Is there anything in the future for docking stations for these secretaries?
No, ma'am, at the moment, what we believe will happen, and here's what we've been asking everybody to just cooperate for just a little bit longer. I'm expecting that we will receive over 3,000 laptops, the Chromebooks, within the 6 to 8 weeks. At that point, any parent who got a desktop and preferred a laptop, we can swap that out. Any secretary or teacher's desktop that we took, we can swap it out by getting back an actual desktop. So I'd hate to invest in docking stations if we're only talking about 2 to 6 weeks before the other devices come in. So that's my hope, that rather than go spend on a docking station, we'll receive the laptops and then just swap them out.
Okay, I only have one other question. As the students are getting their laptops and desktops, what rights are the students going to have? Are they going to have administrative rights to anything and everything within the district on that computer? Because I know teachers don't even have administrative rights on the computer. So what rights are the students going to have on their devices?
They have administrative rights in terms of uploading and downloading updates to that computer. They don't have rights to get into different systems or different databases, but to ensure that they're able to upload the apps that they need, they do have that for that device. And it is a concern because we're going to have to double check for viruses when they come back, and it's going to be more work to clean that computer. But otherwise, we may not be able to use them effectively as an instructional tool.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Webb. Ms. Gonzalez?
Yes, sir. I'd like to commend the technology department for an incredible job. And I know your job's still not over, but anyway, you're doing great. I appreciate it. Also, Dr. Rios, getting the businesses to sponsor laptops, I think that's a great idea. Is that going to be publicized, or how's that going to be? Does Walmart have something like that they can donate?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Henge is going to, I'll say Mr. Henge, but he's going to charge someone with going to Walmart and just buying 2 types of units so we can determine the price. And then we are going to send correspondence probably to everybody who traditionally donates to the Education Foundation, and just present them with our data and see if they will sponsor laptops for students. And hopefully those laptops will be for students to keep. In other words, they'll never come back to the district. But Mr. Henge has identified that what they sell at Walmart, even the less expensive type of laptop, is good enough for the Google platform and the Canvas. So I know that Sandra's working on a letter for me that hopefully we'll finalize and issue out middle to end of the week.
Excellent. Thank you.
And Mr. Henge, just wanted to say again, I think Ms. Gonzalez is absolutely right. The way it was done, it was very organized, very orderly, and we're doing the absolute best that we can do with what we have at this moment. As the orders come in, the purchase orders are being processed and equipment being received, I know this work will continue, and just wanted to thank your staff and everyone involved with the process. Mrs. Webb, I think you raised your hand.
Yes, I also wanted to thank Mr. Henge and all of the technology staff, because I know we just lost one of your team members, and it was very sad for all of us in the district. So with that being said, please thank all of your staff, because I know what they're going through right now, plus trying to get all of the districts set up and all of the students. So thank you so much, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other questions. We'll continue with our agenda. We're down to item D, 8D, compensation pay plan update by Bea Garcia.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. We placed a packet there next to your computer. As you recall, last board meeting, administration recommended for teachers to get a $1,000 return to work stipend in lieu of a raise due to the financial implications that we might have with COVID-19. And for paraprofessionals and auxiliaries to get a 1.7 increase from the midpoint. At that time, board members recommended that instead of the 1.7, we go with a 2%. This will mean that teachers will receive a return to work stipend for $1,200, and paraprofessionals and auxiliaries a 2.0 from the midpoint. During that same board meeting, board members asked how much more it would be if we would include professionals who work with students at the campus. Since then, we send the board members a board communique, and that is a total of $152,235.20. Since then, we discovered that there's 5 additional positions who are district employees or district administrators. However, they have direct contact with students. So if we include those additional positions, that would be $20,217.78 additional, for a total of $172,452.98.
Questions, Mr. Orfield?
What are the descriptions of the other 5 or the new 5 that you found?
Yes, we have the behavioral specialist, the coordinator LSSP, who tests students, and coordinator speech language pathologist. Coordinator for speech language, and they also test students, counselor for special education, and educational diagnostician. And these individuals have direct contact with students.
Dr.
Mr. President, just I want to remind the board members that the budget workbook that we presented right now only includes the teachers, the paraprofessionals, and the auxiliary workers. So if the board decided to do anything else, then we have to go in there and further reduce the budget in different places. Not saying that it can't be done, it's just, it just does add more stress and doesn't leave any cushion for growth in numbers. I know that, to be fair, we have been asked how much it would cost for principals and counselors, but Ms. Garcia, as well as some of the other cabinet members, heard from other people saying, well, hey, we deal with students also, it's not fair. Now, to be fair, probably the principals and the counselors are the ones that deal with students more than anybody else. But because the issue did come up, we provided, to be fair, we provided the information for everybody. But it's not in the budget right now, and it does add more stress to the budget. Anyway, that's further input.
Mr. Orfield, Did you have any further questions?
In a minute, I'll let Ms. Webb ask.
Okay. Ms. Webb?
No, I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a motion that we keep the budget as is with the teachers, paraprofessionals, and auxiliary. Because these are the people that are in the front lines. These are the people that have to make the lesson plans on a daily basis, have the contact with the students on a daily basis. I'm not saying that the other people don't, but they're not preparing lesson plans. They're not checking to make sure that the technology is working to meet with the students. So my recommendation is that we leave the budget as it is, acknowledging that everybody in the district works with students at one point or another. But my recommendation is leave it as is for right now for teachers, paraprofessionals, and auxiliary.
Ms. Sims? Ms. Sims? Amy?
Sorry, Josh. I'd like to see it brought up with the 5 extra with the behavioral specialist, and I would like to see how it's going to adjust. I did talk to Amy earlier, and she explained a little bit to me, but I would like to see if you could present it that way with those people included as well. I would like to see it like that.
Rose, we still have the interactive workbook, which again, some of us had difficulty getting our input in, but if we could just continue with the input from every board member regarding this issue. But I just wanted to make sure that, again, we would be able to have the option of selecting either one, because I was not able to do that, and then I think Ms. Gonzalez expressed and Mrs. Webb that we were not able. I think Amy, you had the same difficulty. So if we could just make sure that we send in our input, that we could decide on this. I know this is for discussion only right now on this item, but I think, you know, we either, you know, I had to call, or Amy had to call me because I was not able to input my response on that. So I just want to make sure that we get the input from everyone.
Mr. Mesa, I think that what we're going to do is I'm going to have Ms. Childress just have a conversation with each board member and go ahead and go through the workbook the way we did with Ms. Haynes earlier, just set up a Zoom meeting individually with each board member and make sure that we document everybody's input so that then we can make a clear recommendation this coming Thursday, this coming Monday. And we will include just the different groups and just see what input every board member provides, and that way we'll share all that Monday when we go to approve the budget. Now, Aide Garcia is going to make a recommendation later today, and that recommendation is going to include teachers, paraprofessionals, and auxiliary. We can amend that. We can further amend that next Monday if that's what the board chooses. But just so that they can get going on that, I would like for her to still proceed with that recommendation for teachers, paraprofessionals, and auxiliary. And then next week, we just talk about everybody else on Monday after we've gotten everybody's input. Would that be acceptable, Mr. Mesa? I think everybody is on board. I don't think anybody has said it's either everybody or nobody. I think everybody is at least together that teachers, auxiliary, and paraprofessionals should receive the 2% return to work stipend. So we'd like to at least present that today.
Yes, Dr. Reyes, I know that over the past 3 or 4 years, more people were added to administrators because of the, I guess, when we have a salary scale study done, that they added more people to administrators, and that's a difficulty that I'm having, that we do have so many other people added now to administrators that that were not on that category before. And this is done through a TA, I'm sorry, not TA, but TASB salary study. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Mesa. They did bring them into the administrator payroll or a group, but they also had their own group before. So it's not like everybody was grouped in teachers. Although I do think the counselors were at one point. Was that correct, Ms. Garcia?
Yes, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
They were listed.
But then everybody got their own pay group. And then here with TASB, the last couple of years, they recommended diagnosticians, instructional specialists, counselors be placed on that administrative pay group too.
Yeah, and that's only, in my opinion, again, that's a concern that I have, that the number becomes quite large after that other group was added. And so I think if you're asking for the response now, I would like to just keep it with teachers, paraprofessional, and auxiliary, and not include administrators, because the cost just elevates a whole lot. That's my opinion.
Again, today's recommendation is just going to include those three groups. Again, just because I feel that in our discussion, nobody has said it's all or nothing. But we will definitely go back and talk to every board member about the additional groups and be able to have that discussion next Monday before we finalize the budget and give people time to just know where they're at.
Okay. I think unless anyone else has any other concern, I think that's a good process. Okay, then no further questions. Thank you. We will go on to the next item on our agenda, and that's the consent agenda. There's a couple of board meeting minutes. There's 4 of them. There's some financial statements. There's some donations, and other purchase orders over $5,000. If you have any questions on these or would like to pull any of those items out, now's the time to do that. Otherwise, one item again, we'll approve all these items on the consent agenda. Any corrections to minutes? Or any questions regarding any purchase order? Or donations?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mesa. On the minutes, I guess the only update is the one where we changed the name for Ms. Childress on awarding of bids for the July 16th meeting.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question, sir.
I said, I guess before we approve the minutes, I guess the only update to the minutes that may have gone out prior to the board book was it's highlighted. I don't know if everyone has it at their place. So it would just be approval of the minutes to include the correction shown.
The wrong Amy.
Yes.
Amy.
Amy Haynes instead of Amy's Childress.
Right.
Yeah. Let me have Amy Childress come back to the presenter's booth, and I remember she mentioned that, but yeah, it was a small correction.
Thank you for pointing that out, Mr. Orfeld.
Yes, sir.
We do have a copy here.
Let me call Amy. There she is.
Any correction to the minutes? We have something at our desk here with awarding of bids. I think the correction is Amy Haynes instead of Amy Childress.
I think it was just a different name. Is that correct, Ms. Childress? We had a different name on there?
I'm sorry, I'm looking, that wasn't shown to me, I apologize.
I called it in, it was Amy Haynes, when it should be Amy Childress. That's the correction.
Okay, so that's a correction.
That was it. Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez.
Those are, okay.
So, before we approve the consent agenda, I'll ask for questions if there's any item that needs to be pulled out. And then once we have a motion with the correction that we change the minutes of the meeting of July 16, 2020. The correction being awarding of bids, RFPs, recommendation made by Amy Haynes instead of Amy Childress. Does anyone have a question regarding the consent agenda? And is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve as amended.
Mr. Overfeld make the motion, and that includes the correction to the minutes of July 16, 2020. Changing from Amy Childress to Amy Haynes. Is there a second to the motion? From Amy
Haynes to Childress. Yes, sir.
Childress to Amy Haynes. This is always going like this the other way. Okay, I'm sorry, the motion was made by Mr. Overfeld, seconded by Amy Haynes. All this in agreement, Mrs. Webb? In agreement, myself in agreement, Ms. Gonzalez, or Mr. Overfeld? Or and Amy, or consent agenda is approved. We go on to administration. Again, donations will be posted on the website. As always, we thank every business, every individual that has donated to our district and our children of this district. So we, again, appreciate those donations will be posted on the website. Administration 10A, consideration to approve the 2020-2021 Student Code of Conduct for the adoption of the Student Parent Handbook. Sandra Hernandez.
Good evening, Mr. Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. Annually, we bring the Student Code of Conduct up for adoption. Today, we will be presenting the 2020-2021 Student Code of Conduct for adoption. The Chapter 37 of the Education Code mandates that each school district shall, with the advice of the district level committee, adopt a student code of conduct. It also states that the Student Code of Conduct shall stand as an authoritative document on its own and with board adoption has the force of local policy. I report that there are no amendments this year to the Code of Conduct. The legislative changes that amended or aligned policy will remain in effect. Board approval at this time will make possible an electronic distribution of the 2020-2021 Student Code of Conduct and the Student Parent Handbook. At this time, I can entertain any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Sandra. And I know that on the update, there was a link to the Student Code of Conduct. And this has been a very challenging year. We're having to change so many different things, but I'll open it up for questions from board members. Ms. Orfeld?
Maybe I just didn't see it when I breezed through the handbook, but for students, once we get back face to face, who intentionally cough on someone or make it a joke, you know, I've got COVID and they cough, will that result in disciplinary action? So I know that has popped up in other areas where that is a punishable offense now. Is that listed in there?
Well, the actual code of conduct did not change, but if there's any harassment or any types of bullying, we have the anonymous reporting tool that is always up and available, and certainly would notify their teacher or their administrator, and certainly we could look into it to see if any violation of the conduct was made. But
sorry, Mr. Overfeld, I'm sorry, we talked about this with Chief Maldonado today and with other individuals, but the answer is absolutely. If a student, now I can't tell you right now whether it's going to be a code that's general to everybody else, but it's going to fall into any one of those categories ranging all the way up to assault. So the answer is yes, it will be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
Anyone else? I don't see a hand raised. So at this point, I'll ask for the recommendation from the administration.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the 2020-2021 Code of Conduct for the adoption of the Student Parent Home Handbook as presented.
You have heard the recommendation from the administration. Is there a motion for approval? Mr. Orfeld, is there a second to the motion? Ms. Haynes, all those in agreement? Ms. Webb, in agreement? Myself, Ms. Gonzalez in favor, Mr. Orfeld in favor, and Amy Haynes in favor. Motion's approved unanimously with 5 votes.
Thank you.
Next item, 11A, consideration to approve the submittal of the online attestation to the Texas Education Agency for synchronous instruction in order to receive funding for synchronous attendance. Ida Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. A synchronous average daily attendance method has been established as a commissioner waiver. LEAs must submit an attestation that they are prepared to offer synchronous instruction as part of the funding process for synchronous attendance. Among other requirements, synchronous instruction must address the required curriculum per the Texas Education Code 28.002 and meet the daily minutes to earn full day funding. You'll see at the bottom that 3rd through 5th grade has 180 instructional minutes, 6th through 12, 240, and then pre-K is not eligible to earn funding through the synchronous model. A copy of the attestation is included in your board packet. There are a total of 12 questions or attestations. Under Student and Family Services, we do have 4. Under Educator Support, 2. Under Tech Support and Access, 3. And under Instructional Framework, we have 3. The TA requirement, the superintendent and the school board must attest that the commitments are being met as of the date the attestation is submitted. There are 12 questions. I did include them in the packet. There's also a copy at your desk. If you'd like, we can go through each one in case you have questions, or if you just have a question on a particular one, we can address that.
Question from board members? No questions.
All right, sir. Recommendation? It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the attestation for synchronous instruction and gives approval for submission to the Texas Education Agency.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mrs. Webb, seconded by Mr. Orfeld. All those in agreement? Mrs. Webb? In agreement. Myself in agreement. Diana Gonzalez in agreement. Mr. Orfeld in agreement. And Amy Haynes in agreement. Motion carries unanimously with 5 votes. Thank you very much, Ida.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa.
No items under 12. We go to item 13 on our agenda, Business and Finance. First item is 13A, consideration to approve the appraisal roll and tax collection certification by the tax assessor collector, Amy Childress.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, members of the board. The Chief Appraiser, Sherry Sheedy, for the Valverde County Appraisal District, submitted the 2020 estimated preliminary appraisal roll showing the total appraised, assessed, and taxable values of all property and the total taxable value of new property. Attached is a certification by Mr. Rogelio Musquiz Jr., the Assessor Collector of Taxes for Valverde County, of the anticipated collection rate and the total estimated amount collectible. Mr. Musquiz was unable to be with us this evening, but he did receive and did sign the certification. Would you like me to read that, or you do have a copy, Mr. Mesa?
We'll read the amounts for each one.
Okay.
The assessed value.
This says, okay. All right. The following is to certify that I have received the 2020 SFDR CISD appraisal roll and estimate of taxable values from the Valverde Appraisal District as follows. The assessed value of $3,119,208,095 minus exemptions, freeze taxable values, and transfer adjustment equals an adjustable taxable value of $2,110,409,430. If calculated as a proposed tax rate, the 2020-21 rates would be as follows. M&O tax rate of 0.9927, INS tax rate of 0.057 cents, which would be a total tax rate of $1.497. When applying the M&O tax rate to the taxable value with an anticipated collection rate of 98%, the total the total M&O tax collection is $21,665,748. When applying the INS tax rate with an anticipated collection rate of 98%, the total INS tax collection is $1,244,029. And it is signed by Mr. Muskis.
Okay, questions from board members? Dr. Rios, I just want to make sure that we saw the, I guess the posted amount in the Del Unisro, and those correspond to the same numbers here, Amy?
Yes, sir.
For some reason, I remember the INS being 0.
Prior year was 0, but this year was the 057.
Okay, so just if you could double check on that. I know that I was
Okay.
looking at this paper and kind of caught my attention there. I just want to make
Okay,
sure.
I'll double check. Yes, sir.
Okay, with that being said, this is an action item. We'll entertain a motion for approval.
May I read the recommendation?
Mm,
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the district's anticipated collection rate and the total estimated amount collectible as presented by Mr. Rogelio Muskis Jr.
We have the recommendation by administration. Is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mr. Orfeld. Is there a second to the motion? Mrs. Webb? All those in favor? Mrs. Webb? In favor? Myself in favor. Diana Gonzalez? In favor. Mr. Orfeld? In favor. Name? In favor. Motion is approved unanimously by 5 affirmative votes.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. The next item that we have is human resource, the item 13B, consideration to approve submission of application for the 2020-2021 elementary and secondary school emergency relief grant application for federal funding in the amount of $2,625,963 to the appropriate headquarter authority. Amy Childers.
Good evening once again. The Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, or the ESSER Fund, authorized under Section 18003 of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, also known as the CARES Act, provides districts with emergency relief funds to address the impact that COVID-19 has had and continues to have on elementary and secondary school. SFDR CISD is requesting the funds to cover activities that are necessary to maintain the operation of and continuity of services in the district and continuing to employ the existing staff of the district.
Questions from board members? I think all of us understand what the CARES Act is pretty much, and we're glad to receive these monies. No questions and recommendation, please.
All right. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the submittal of the 2020-2021 ESSER grant application in the amount of $2,625,963 for the funding of emergency relief funds to address the impact of COVID-19 to the appropriated headquarter authority for the 2020-21 year as presented.
Thank you very much, Amy. Is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor, Mrs. Wood? In favor, myself in favor. Ms. Gonzalez? In favor, Mr. Orfeld? In favor, and Amy Haynes? In favor. Motion is approved, unanimous. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to Human Resources. Item 14A, consideration to approve the employee job descriptions and evaluation forms for the following: Coordinator Del Rio Care Program, P-TECH update, Secretary Bilingual Programs update, Aide Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa, members of the board, Dr. Rios. In your packet, you would find the updates to those job descriptions Mr. Mesa mentioned. And the first one is a grant funded for the Del Rio Cares program. And this position is being consolidated with the P-TECH coordinator. In your packet, you'll see all the new responsibilities and just updates to the job description, as well as the bilingual program secretary. This position was converted from a CNI secretary to the bilingual program secretary, and you'll find some of updated responsibilities in the job description as well. Is there any questions for either one of these job descriptions?
Questions for board members? Any questions? No questions. Recommendation, please.
It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the employee job descriptions and evaluation forms as discussed.
With the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Ms. Gonzalez. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Orfeld. All those in agreement? Mrs. Webb? In agreement. Myself in agreement. Ms. Gonzalez? In agreement. Mr. Orfeld? In agreement. And Amy Haynes? In agreement. Motion is carried unanimously by 5 votes. Thank you, Aide Garcia. Next item is 14B, consideration to approve updates to the 2020-2021 district compensation plans. Aide Garcia.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mesa. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve the compensation pay plan for 2020-2021 as discussed.
Questions? Ms. Wood? Did you have a question? No? Anyone has a question? Okay. Then you have heard the recommendation. Is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mr. Orfeld, seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor? Mrs. Webb? In favor? Myself in favor. Ms. Gonzalez in favor. Mr. Orfeld? In favor, and Amy Haynes in favor. Motion is carried unanimously with 5 votes. Thank you very much. Next item that we have is we're going to closed session, Dr. Rose. We're permitted to go into closed session permitted by sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.073, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, and 551.084. 551.087 of the Government Code, Texas Open Meetings Act. If a final vote is required, it will be taken upon reconvening into open session. The time is 7:50. We are now in closed session. Thank you. Okay, the time is 8:33 p.m. No action was taken in executive session. We're reconvening into open session. We're down to item 18A. Consideration to approve the personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, resignations. Aide Garcia.
Thank you, President Mesa. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve Sobeda Perry for third grade teacher at Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary.
Recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mr. Oldfeld, seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor, Mrs. Webb? In favor, myself in favor, Ms. Gonzalez in favor, Mr. Oldfeld in favor, and Amy Haynes in favor. Motion's approved unanimously. Item 18B is going to be tabled, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And therefore, we have no other items on the agenda. Is there a motion for adjournment? Motion made by Mr. Oldfeld, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in agreement, Ms. Webb? In agreement, myself in agreement, Ms. Gonzalez in agreement, Mr. Oldfeld in agreement, Amy in agreement. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you and good night, everyone.